I'm glad to see Jerry Pierce is here. He was one of the early board members. So good to see you here, Jerry.
Nice to see you.
So as Ellen said, I'm Sally Blea, and I was born and raised in my favorite little town of Tabernash. And Bobby and I lived in Anchorage, Alaska for about 5 years before we came back to Colorado. And ultimately we purchased a home in Columbine Lake. That was in January of '78, so I've been here about 45 years. I was excited when Donna invited me to give this little spill tonight because I get to wear my Three Lakes little top here that I haven't had on for probably 5 or more years. So I don't know, it was just my little fun thing for tonight. That dates back to January 4 of 1983, to be exact, when I started working for Three Lakes. I retired on January 5 of 2018, so it's been a little while. So with that, I must disclose first that I'm not a representative of Three Lakes, and the views represented are my own views and not that necessarily of the Three Lakes Water and Sand District. But since I worked for them for 35 years, maybe I qualify here tonight. At the time that I started working for Three Lakes, the office is where it is today, except that the Metro Rec District had used it for their maintenance of their go-karts, or golf carts. And Three Lakes took it over, and with their approval, the BLM signed a forever lease, probably. And we changed the garage into some offices and a board meeting room. And with that, we were on our way. It also holds a state-certified lab that the Three Lakes is able to do lab testing, water testing for the public. So it's a good little amenity that we offer. Before that, I think Three Lakes held their meetings in the town of Grand Lake. So at the time that I started, the system was completed and was operational. But let's go further back a little bit to the creation and the stumbling blocks that occurred then. Three Lakes is a unique district. Districts are usually created by the people for a particular cause. But this district was created by the General Assembly of the state of Colorado in 1971, known as the Three Lakes Water and Sanitation District Act. It was Title 3210 of the state statutes. Title 32 is a special district statute that all other districts fell under except Three Lakes. I can remember when I was going to SDA classes or seminars, and whatever they were talking about, Three Lakes was always the exception. Oh well, I got to know everybody that way, I guess. There were many studies back in the day completed by the Environmental Protection Agency that led them to determine that the Three Lakes, that would be Grand Lake, Shadow Mountain, and Lake Granby, were in danger of being polluted. And many believed that the sewage was already being dumped into the lakes, either directly or indirectly. So this was important because the area was deemed recreational, and its viability was dependent on the Three Lakes for recreational purposes. So the oldest study dates back to 1954, recognizing algae control. And in 1969, the State Health Department stated, since Grand Lake is a popular lake for body contact sports, there is a concern that a high coliform count forms a hazard to the public using the lake. And in similar fashion, in 1971, the Colorado Department of Game, Fish, and Parks issued a similar warning for fish and wildlife. So we all know that Grand Lake is a natural-born lake. But what about Lake Granby and Shadow Mountain Lake? Probably most of you know how they came to be. Anyone care to answer how Shadow Mountain and Lake Granby came to be? It was the Colorado Big Thompson project that put those lakes here. Actually, there were 10 lakes, and those were 2 of them. So the act was created under the premises of for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the area, and essentially ordered the initial board of directors, of which there were 7 appointed by the county commissioners, to design, build, operate, and maintain a regional system consisting of sewage collection, transmission, and treatment. This master plan was approved by the Board of County Commissioners in 1973, and in 1977, the district petitioned and got approval to be governed by the Special District Act. So we lost our special act of our own, and we were governed like everybody else, which was kind of nice. It also brought down the 7-member board to a 5-member board. We lost some of the privileges, but probably we had used what we needed from that act. Because the district was created by the General Assembly instead of by the people, it did not abode well with its constituents. That is, those property owners outside of the town of Grand Lake and Columbine Lake who were already, because they were already being serviced by their own system. So these people were mostly those outside of those 2 areas. It was met with a lot of vocal opposition and maybe even a little physical opposition at the time. Many people felt that their septic systems were working just fine, and this central sewage system just simply wasn't needed. An opposition group was quickly formed, and meetings were held regularly at a home on Highway 34. Don, I don't know if you got a picture of the home where they were meeting.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, they met regularly there, and they didn't hold back their opposition of what Three Lakes was having to deal with.
May I say on that?
Sure.
So the Shadow Mountain Club building, it's the house which is just to the right of Stillwater Church, well, to the left if you're facing the church. And so it's a home right now, but at the time it was like a club, and they'd have picnics and social events and things like that. Sylvia, did you ever go to the Shadow Mountain Clubhouse?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Just checking. So, but it turned into the hot spot of where all the opposition was. That's where the leaders of the group, that's where they gathered, and that's where it all started to get boiling. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
There were times when law enforcement was called to be present at our board meetings. I remember a time when an election was coming up, my first election for Three Lakes. And Greg Long was the district attorney at the time, and he came and paid me a little visit, and he said, well, he warned me that the elections of previous were contentious, and of course the opposition group was going to be arriving by the busloads to vote, and there would be many watchers at the polling places. And so I prepared, and luckily I had previous elections experience, having worked for Larry Hartlaub, the attorney in Granby, for 6 years. So I was able to get through those elections, and we didn't get the bus loads that Greg talked about. Maybe it was winding down a little. And there was no opposition to any of my elections. But we did get 1 or 2 of the opposition group on the board, and that was probably a good thing. At least they had a say at the table. And it seemed to calm down a little bit at that point. So a large part of the system was paid for by federal and state grant monies, and then tap fees. The board instituted a tap fee program at the time, which would allow any property owner to purchase a tap fee at the rate of $750. Actually, the rate was $2,500, but they did this little program for about a year to sell these taps and pay for this system. So they not only sold to improved lots, but to vacant lots. That seemed to be not a good idea later on, but at the time it seemed right to do. So many taps were sold, and since Grand Lake already had its system, I remember that we had given all of the users at that time not a discount, I think they just didn't even pay for the sewer for about 5 years as kind of a reimbursement for their system. And it wasn't until later that the district stopped selling those taps to vacant land, and now, of course, today you can't buy a tap for vacant land and just vacant. You have to have a building plans sent to the county before you can even buy a tap. So the district completed the construction. It was a 1.3 million gallon per day lagoon treatment system. The size of the treatment was based on the full capacity of 1 day. And the study included all improved and undeveloped properties that could possibly be serviced, and included, of course, both Grand Lake and Columbine, because there were unimproved properties at the time. But this construction was also met with controversy. Easements had to be obtained, many via a condemnation process. Property was purchased behind what was then the Cook Ranch. I don't think we have a picture of the Cook Ranch, but most of you probably know what that is on Highway 34. And you can't see the existing building, nor could have you seen the lagoons from the highway at the time. But it was a 3-stage aeration lagoon system, and we couldn't find a picture of the lagoons themselves, but I think that's the property that sits in front of the building there now, where the lagoons were housed. You can kind of tell. That was probably in a construction phase. So during construction, I remember an incident where some sewer main piping that had been completed was filled, a manhole was filled with concrete, as just the opposition group's kind of way to say, no, we don't like this system. Anyone here want to complain about that concrete in the manhole? All right, we still don't know. A small treatment plant had to be built in Sun Valley, up above in the park. And of course, we had to do a condemnation process to get that plant built as well. Later on, the entire system came together, and that no longer exists, but there was a little system in Sun Valley at the time. So all of these small little condemnation lawsuits were very unhappy times for the district. So not to mention what was next after the system was built, it became operational in early 1982. The Three Lakes Act also mandated that if the district found that for the purpose of the health, safety, and welfare of the district, all property boundaries within 400 feet of a district sewer main would be compelled to connect. So on April 26th of 1982, after a public hearing where there were over 40 members of the general public in attendance, the board passed a resolution this was indeed proper, and they commenced a compelled connection program. The district, of course, had already approved the master plan according to the environmental studies of where the sewer would be available. And the boundary of the district was quite large, but the plan would only service a portion of the district because it was too expensive in many parts of the district to get sewer there. And still today, the district doesn't serve all of the subdivisions. There's subdivisions like Trail Creek Estates and Bussy Hills, Sunset Point, Stillwater Estates. There's probably some others that's just too far out and too expensive to get to. The enforcement of the connection was fought tooth and nail by many because of their own cost of connection, and with the idea that their septic tank or their holding tank or even their cesspool was working just fine. I came in at the time of the enforcement of the connection. The county health department had also implemented a plan that required abandoned tanks to be crushed to render them unusable once they connected to the system. But we know that there were many plumbers that simply installed a shut-off valve from a homeowner existing sewer line to their tank, just in case our system failed. It didn't, it still works today. The county did not monitor the abandonment of the tank. Three Lakes sent out the notice that they had to abandon it, but that's how they got away with that. I began working for the district in January '83 during the heavily heated controversy of the compelled connection program. And I had to keep reminding myself that if I weren't doing that job, somebody else would be. So, I went on with my job. It was sad, and I was compassionate and had sympathy for those that had to connect, but I call those my dark days of Three Lakes. Of course, Donna, you were interested in the job. You could have been there doing my job, right?
Thank goodness it turned out the way it did.
All right. They were not fun years, for sure. A lot of connections were made willingly and enthusiastically, and others not so much. The opposition group was still in force a couple of years later, and they simply didn't comply with the connection order. But there was only one business that closed down. I don't know if you recall the shower hut, but it was on Highway 34 and County Road 41, Donna?
Yeah, right here, yeah. And that too is a house now. I took a picture of it this morning.
Oh, that's correct. It's a
Yeah.
house now.
So just as you pull into 41, it's on the left. But you said that's the only one that
That's the only
closed?
business that actually blamed their shutdown because of the Three Lakes compelled connection order and the cost for them to connect.
And may I say, what the shower hut was all the people at Stillwater Campground across would walk over to the shower hut for bathroom showers. That's why it was an important part of Grand Lake at the time.
Yeah. So the opposition group finally filed a complaint in district court. There was 164 plaintiffs in this complaint. I think 4 pages listed, everybody that was on the list. They filed this in district court in August of 1983, and they challenged the district's connection order. They cited that the connection order was void because the district did not provide the property owners with individual notices and the opportunity to present individual evidence at a judicial type hearing. In other words, each property owner would get their say at the court level as to why they should not have to connect, and Three Lakes would have to answer it. Well, imagine that we'd have to go to court for at least these 164 and probably more. They just felt that they should have their own say in court. So they also sought a stay of the district's enforcement connection, but the lawsuit went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the district won at every level. So we proceeded on. So a few years later, after the program was implemented and the enforcement ran its course, we were left to deal with those that didn't comply. So a program was instituted where the district hired its own contractors to make that connection, and then the district billed the homeowner for the cost of the connection. Oh boy, yeah, there were law officers on site whenever the contractors showed up at some of these places. They tried to stop us at the court level again, and of course failed. And I can remember at least 3 property owners that threatened us with guns should we try to come onto their property. I had a personal instance where a property owner came to visit me at the office one day, and he wanted to talk to me about his certified letter that he received in the mail. And I pulled out the letter, and attached to it was my post office receipt showing the certified letter had been sent to him. And on the receipt, I had noted his name so that I would know who the letter was sent to. And he tried to grab it, actually, the receipt from me, and a little fight and argument ensued. And my bookkeeper heard the little argument and called the police department, and all I could hear was these sirens, and the lights were coming, and it just seemed a little scary at the time, I guess. But he sued us in district court for forgery. He sued me personally in 3 Lakes in district court for forgery. And it took all of our attorney 2 minutes to explain to the court what that receipt was all about. Oh well, that was kind of a sad little story, actually. Over the ensuing years of receiving service fees by check, we got a lot of checks with not so nice little notes on them. There was notes on there like, well, they would literally have bloody fingerprints on the checks. And they would say things like blood, sweat, and tears, or you have blood on your hands, or, you know, just things like that. That heartache carried on for a few years before things settled down, though. In the end, the sewer main extensions still affected a lot of those that are still not connected today. Extensions, I think, still go on today, and required connections are still being made. So I don't, you know, it's going to take a long, long while before maybe this, we would hope the whole district is finally served with sewer. And there was quite a few that you'll probably just have to not serve sewer and have agreements because there's probably a mountain between us or a lake or something, so that's always going to be. So our treatment plant today is titled the Table Mountain Reclamation Facility. I think we have a picture of that. It's not the lagoons of the early 80s.
And describe
Yeah.
where that is.
What's that?
Describe where that is.
Yeah. It's state of the art. I don't know if any of you were ever, we held a little public viewing when it opened, and maybe some of you attended that, but it's a very nice facility. It has a nice lab, which the district uses for its own state required testing. My chief operator and I oversaw this upgrade from the irrigation lagoon ponds to this 2.0 MGDs. It's called a sequencing batch reactor activated sludge wastewater system or treatment. That was in 2002. As the district was faced with more stringent discharge limits requiring us to treat ammonia, the lagoon system could not do that. So the system was approaching its design capacity, and in 21, the district again upgraded its facility to treat potentially dissolved copper based on new effluent permit limits set by the state. And those are some of the inside of the treatment plant that the guys operate. Our whole system, including that, is monitored by a telemetry system, and even our lift stations throughout the whole system, many of them are monitored by a telemetry system that gives them information about what's going on in the whole system. There's probably, well, there is 115 lift stations, including the 3 major lift stations. I think we have pictures of the lift stations. They're really just buildings is all you can see, but it costed over $1 million just to replace the Grand Lake lift station. It's located behind the fire station in Grand Lake. I can remember a time when the old lift station failed. It was underground. And the operators spent time working underground in the lift station, in the sewage, to stop the overflow. My husband, Bobby, who was a plumber, always said, "A plumber abides by 2 rules. Sewage does not flow uphill, and you never chew your fingernails." Yeah, our operators abided by that rule for sure. So that lift station, oh, yeah, he always said that. So, of course, the lift station now is above ground, so not to worry about your fingernails, I guess. So systems are rated A, B, C, or D according to their treatment and their size. And A is the highest. I believe ours is still a B. It could be an A because of the change back when we had to upgrade to dissolved copper treatment. But so we have to have a certified operator with that type of license to oversee it. During the time that I was with Three Lakes, a co-partner from Lakes Sanitation District and myself put on many classes. The state required that these operators have so many hours a year to keep their licenses, and we would sponsor these classes up at the treatment plant and bring in people that could teach them either math, usually math and science. And we got operators coming from Steamboat and from Silverthorne and even Idaho Springs and Walden would come to our classes, and so it was a big help that they didn't all have to go to Denver. So the district offers a sanitary service only to those customers within the boundaries of the district, and I think we have a picture of the boundaries. It's quite large, actually. Yeah. We presently service approximately 3,008 residential properties and 141 commercial properties. It's still facing significant growth, and single-family residents with septic tanks are being utilized with capacities that exceed typical home occupancy, especially because of the overnight rentals. You're seeing little cabins filled up with as many people as they can get in there, and they're on septic tanks still. So of course, those septic tanks are being challenged, and the board is having to look at what they have titled in their 2022 vision statement. I think we have that vision statement. It's called a septic to sewer conversion project. They just started, I think I said 2022. It will require more sewer main extensions at a very high cost. Hopefully, funding can be gotten for their endeavor, and I applaud them for their thinking. I think it continues what we fought for all those years ago. So, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Anyway.
Oh, come on now, you have sewer stories or questions. I know.
Yeah, I think there's more juicy stories out there.
I do have a question, and I don't know if you can answer because it's fairly new, but maybe you can. I know the law that was just passed for the Grand Lake to be cleaned up. Do you have any idea how that might affect the sewer system?
You know, I don't think I know that that's been on, they've discussed that for a very long time. I don't think it has anything to do with our sewer system.
Okay.
No. It's the clarity of Grand Lake you're talking about, and the Thompson project that messed that up, and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you don't think it will affect the sewer system in any way?
No, I don't think so. No, I think we've done our part of cleaning up the lake.
Yeah.
actually.
Okay, I promised I wouldn't tell my story, but I'm going to anyway. So we bought a little cabin when we first got here in 1983, and we were delighted to know, and it was part of the price, that it was hooked up to the sewer line, which was great, you know. Time passed for years. I started to notice a fragrance that I didn't really understand in the summer, but the following Christmas, you know, something always happens when the grandkids are stuck in this little cabin. Toilet started to back up, etc. Okay, fine. God bless the Pachecos who came out and on, I think it was the day after Christmas, and discovered that our septic system, previous septic system, was still in the ground. And whoever hooked it up, and I know it wasn't Bobby Blea, whoever hooked it up simply put the pipe from the sewer line into one side of the septic system, and the pipe to our facilities to the other side of the septic system, and left the septic system in the middle. And it filled up. So the Pachecos, you know how that goes. And I wish I'd known all of this background, really. Because we were just concerned about the kids. I would be furious, actually. It was more like worrying. Okay, so top down. There was a hand over there. Was that you, Corinne? Somebody. Oh, Steve.
Why do you call it water and sanitation?
Yeah.
Was there ever a thinking of distributing water also?
Yes, there was. Initially, the state legislature felt that maybe there would be a time that Three Lakes, you know, could also provide a service of water. But, you know, Jerry, and you know, we just never have gotten to that. And I don't know, you know, with water rights and all of that sort of stuff, it's just, it's a hard one. Yeah, I think Three Lakes it probably is going to be just sanitation for a long, long time unless they take over one of the water districts. Now I know that the Three Lakes district was just at a board meeting of the Columbine Lake Water District talking about wanting to take over Columbine Lake Water, dissolving the district. But Columbine Lake in that meeting was very much opposed to letting the water rights go, because you're going to have to let those water rights go, and I don't think that's going to happen. I can't speak for the public, but from the consensus of the discussion, I think they're not going to get it. So, yeah, that's just what's going to happen.
So anybody that's not serviced by Grand Lakes Water is all wells?
No, every
there another
Grand
service?
Lake and Columbine Lake both are part of the Three Lakes system.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, back in the day when the area.
All the places between here and Granby on 34, are they mostly wells?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking of septic systems. You know, I don't know about water wells. I know I don't know. I'm not.
There's no other water service then, is there? No?
I'm sorry.
There are only a couple.
Oh, okay.
Soda Springs has its own, and Lake Forest by the company plant has Lake Forest in North Shore.
But mostly wells for the rest of it?
Right, mostly,
Yeah.
almost all wells, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a few wells.
Lake Ridge has one there.
Right, good point, right.
Okay. I'm not skilled in wells.
Just a follow-up on why it's taken so long to get the lake finally getting treated, maybe, we might have some assistance. I know for years when I was in government, we would show up to meetings with Northern Water or Denver Water or whatever. It was always one representative and 5 lawyers. So I can tell you how those meetings went, you know? And it was just beating your head against the wall trying to get your point through. And we had all the pictures, you know, where they showed the flow of the algae going for Grand Lake. And all that documented, and it just was like, well, it was just unforeseen problems, and we're not responsible.
Yeah, I think there was some stories of piping that went directly into the lake. The sewage was going directly into the lakes. I think I remember a few pictures.
I think there was still some, even not so many years ago, on Jericho, that were still.
There's a few houses, I think, on Jericho, maybe 1 or 2, I don't know what's been built since my time, that were never connected, could not get connected, but we covered quite a bit of that area, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to
So,
Cat.
did you say that Grand Lake had its own sewage treatment system before
Three Lakes, yes,
The town had its own? And then
Yes.
it just kind of got absorbed by Three Lakes?
yes. And Columbine Lake as well. Yeah, and that's why the town, I think they received a 5-year reprieve of their user fees because we took over their system, and I don't know if any other monies exchanged hands, but yeah. Yeah, and Grand Lake Lift Station, all of the sewage flows into that Grand Lake Lift Station, and then it carries it on down the highway, so that's quite a big lift station there behind the fire station. One of the majors, yeah. And Shadow Mountain has a major, and then Stillwater has another major, and they all collect the sewage that then flows out to the sewer plant.
So there's a lot of electricity that is used to pump all that.
A lot.
So how, like, what would that budget item be? Do you remember how much Three Lakes pays in electricity?
You're testing my memory, Will.
Well, that probably includes the plant too, so that's kind of
Yeah.
fair.
Wow, so when there's a power failure up here, it's really a big deal, huh?
It is a big deal,
I
and
mean,
I
it's
think
never
even
been
with
very
the,
long.
with the fire that happened, I think they might have lost, I know they had some damage. I don't know exactly what, maybe some of the lift stations out there. I'm not real sure, but there was that was a hard time just with the fire itself. But
Oh, I bet.
yeah, when a system goes down, that's how, or, you know, with the electrical,
Yeah.
it's a difficult
Quickly,
time.
trouble.
And in the early days, we used to have to go pump out. In fact, we used to hire, that's another story, we used to hire Sonny Pacheco's company and others to come and keep up by cleaning out the lift stations and hauling it out and coming back and all day long.
Wow.
Yeah, now that we have a telemetry system and we know when things are getting heated up, we can control that much better. But back in the early days of the aerated lagoon system, and yeah, that was a tough time to have something go down and have to pump out.
Where's that new plant physically located?
I'm sorry.
Where's the new plant physically located?
So you're not familiar with the Cook Ranch, but can you explain better,
Yeah.
Donna?
Yeah, so Road 41 is the one to Trail Creek that's across from Stillwater Campground. Road 41 about, it feels like a mile to its trail. There's a circle road and the lagoons are in the distance there. So those properties are all 2-acre tracts in Stillwater Estates. And so those are not serviced by the district, but the lagoon treatment plant is beyond those properties. And it's just because they're too big. I mean, there's no point in servicing them at this time. I hope it'll stay that way for a while.
Yes, Pat?
So Sally, we essentially are helping to purify the water that goes over to the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District before it even goes over through the tunnel. Has there ever been any talk to the district about how can't you help us clean your water before we send it your way? Because that's essentially what we're doing by cleaning the water before it goes into the lakes, the effluent, and then it goes through to them. Has Northern ever even been asked to participate in some of the efforts of the Three Lakes District?
I'm not sure if I'm getting your full question, but the Three Lakes system goes out to the Colorado River, not into Grand Lake.
It goes into Lake Granby, Shadow Mountain. Don't those streams flow right into those lakes? And that water is then pumped up to Grand Lake and then it flows over to the other side.
I don't recall any conversations about Three Lakes helping to clean up Grand Lake other than the sewage portion of it. Are you talking about clarity?
No,
or?
I'm talking about the fact that you just said there were people pumping sewage right into the lakes.
Yes.
There's failing septic tanks that are getting into runoff from streams that then flows into Shadow Mountain Lake.
Yes.
Lake Granby. Some of that water, a lot of that water, makes its way over to the other side.
Yeah, and that's what we cleaned up essentially. We stopped that flow into those lakes by making these people get on a sewer system that they then could not dump directly into the lakes like you're talking about. And that was the whole idea, was to stop that sort of thing. So I don't think that today, I mean, we still have maybe some of it because a lot of houses still aren't connected. And I'm assuming that they might have better holding tanks than they did back with cesspools in the day. But I don't think that I guess I would like to believe that we're really not polluting the lake now with sewage.
Right, I don't think we are now.
No.
Because we're paying a ton of money
Yeah.
to clean and do all this work.
Right,
And
right.
the Northern District is getting a huge benefit from this.
Yeah.
Now, well, I don't know. I'm just curious if they've ever even been asked to consider how the community here is basically helped to clean their water before it goes over through the tunnel. In my opinion, that's essentially what we're doing.
I see your point.
We're going both ways, going west and east.
Yeah, I see your point, Pat. I don't recall any of those
Yeah, I don't
conversations.
think it ever would.
Yeah,
I don't think we had conversations about that, but I knew the Front Range complained about the quality of the water they were stealing.
You got my point there.
point well taken there. Yeah, that's true.
I thought one of the options for, within the clarity, was to actually put a treatment, basically, on Shadow Mountain right before the bridge. I thought that was one of the options, for to improve to help with the clarity before, which would actually add, I mean, it was an option that's been discussed, but I don't think anybody's very excited about actually putting in another treatment plant on the shores of Shadow Mountain.
We discussed having a separate pumping system to capture the water in pipes and place it to the tunnel.
Yeah.
That got thrown out.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
You know,
As
so
long as you're pushing that
wouldn't
water
there
back
be-
up into Grand Lake, you're ruining Grand Lake.
Yeah, you're right.
It is not a snow melt lake any longer, not
No.
true.
Yeah, that's another issue for somebody else. For Three Lakes.
Well, once again, thank you. Mike.